And welcome to this episode of the Shaman's Way podcast. Some of you may have actually attempted to download the episode we're doing today back on April 9th, but due to some technical glitches in which no sound was actually being produced from the podcast, we promptly took it down and are re-recording it and re-releasing it right now. So this podcast is on tips and tricks for helping you with your journey work. How's it going today, Kriket?
It is going very well today. Thank you, Doug. And I'm glad that we are able to revisit the topic of tips and tricks for journeying. The first thing that I want to talk about is the anchor spot. I know in the Library of Free Resources, there is a guided meditation and also a short bit that is written on the anchor spot. And I would encourage you, if you haven't taken the opportunity to check that out, to do so. The anchor spot is a place that is representative of the threshold between the mundane world and the sacred world. The anchor spot for me is where I am able to drop the energy from the journey that I've just previously done, so that I don't carry a lot of that extra baggage with me when I cross over back into this world. So it's like a shower. Really, the anchor spot is like a shower. Let's just put it really. Sometimes I come out and I just stand in the fire and I let the fire burn away, whatever it is. And sometimes I come out of the underworld, out of the lower world, and I come out of the black and out of the darkness and come out into light, and that just seems to clear me off. Sometimes in my anchor spot, I take off my weapons and I hand them to a servant who takes them away from me. There's many different ways, but they are all symbolisms, they're all movements, they are all indications to me that I am leaving the spirit world behind and I'm entering into this world unburdened. And so it's been a practice that has really developed over the years. So I encourage people to engage with their anchor spot, find their anchor spot, and bring it together for their own practice.
And everybody's going to have a fairly different, or potentially a very different anchor spot.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to explore it. Find out what it is like. I found over the years that my anchor spot has changed as I've evolved in my shamanic journey practice. So what began as a small fire eventually grew to a larger fire, changed shape, and then I moved into another area of the medicine wheel. So fire wasn't always my anchor spot, it became water. That's a whole other topic. So I want to get to the second part of tips and tricks to journeying, which is power animals. Do you work with your power animals very successfully, Doug? Do you have a good relationship with yours?
Yeah, when I do work with them, I would say so, for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very specific ones that seem to come up over and over.
Mm-hmm. I like that. And there are relationships, power animals you build relationships with. We find and we journey with our power animal, and this is an opportunity to move into the spirit world safely and protect it. Power animals are also very good for helping us interpret the world around us. We are not necessarily fully aware of what the spirit world looks like, what it contains, what kind of movements one can make, and it is unfamiliar territory. So power animals help you figure it out, navigate it. If you're running into a spirit that you've never seen before and you don't know if it's friendly or if it's foe, it's kind of good to have a power animal and go, whoa, back the fuck up. This bitch is going to kick your ass, So it's nice. That's, okay, so there's the unstructured Kriket speaking, The next, part of it is the four directions. So get to know the four directions in the spirit world. I like to travel in the middle world to find the world tree. And the world tree has four separate directions for me. And it was by journeying from the center of the world tree into that direction that I was able to understand what the center was like of the medicine wheel. And I was able to journey into the 4 directions to figure out what the guardians were for directions, what the relationship was, what is the relationship of the 4 aspects of the human. So when we work in the 4 directions, there's so many different layers to the 4 directions. So if you say, oh yeah, I've journeyed to the spirit of the north, I've met the guardian. Well, that's really nice. Did you have a glass of wine? Was it a quick trip? And now do you know the spirit, the guardian of the north, like super awesome? Like, as you know, so I think there's different layers, the same as there's different layers in relationships. Journeying and finding relationships is what is the long-term benefit from my perspective on what this is in relationship to. So, one of the most frustrating comments that I hear from people, from individuals who've journeyed, is, they cannot quiet the monkey mind. And I think it is really important to say you don't get it the first time out. And it takes dedication and it takes practice to quiet the monkey mind. And the best way to figure out how to quiet your monkey mind is to try different techniques. I think it is a shame that we give up on ourselves because we've tried journeying 5 times and we haven't been able to quiet the monkey mind. I think it's a shame that we don't allow ourselves the opportunity to get to know ourselves better. If you haven't had the opportunity to journey 5 times because you got discouraged the first time, I truly would encourage you to try again, because it's not everything is worth something. And of course, sometimes we run into a spiritual practice that isn't our ballywhack. So it may not be, shamanism may not be your ballywhack. It may not be what drives you, but it drives me. So that's why I'm talking about this. So we're going to quiet the monkey mind. And I like to encourage people to learn breath work. And it can be very, very simple. It can be as simple as breathing in for the count of 4, holding your breath for the count of 4, breathing out for the count of 4, holding your breath for the count of 4, and that being 1 round. And I consider that a box breath. There are many ways of deepening the breath. And when we deepen the breath, the only place we can be when we're concentrating on our breath is here and now. That's the only place we can be. We cannot think about breathing and be doing our grocery list next Tuesday. That really engages our present mind. It is engaging the present mind that helps to quiet the monkey mind. The monkey mind is not your awareness. Your awareness is what is behind the monkey mind. And that's the concept we're trying to get at. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind your thoughts. When we journey, we are not our awareness. We are the awareness behind our consciousness. The drumming is what gets us behind our consciousness. Drumming is what gets us to that awareness behind our thoughts. And getting to know that part of your mind can take a long time. It is a neuroscience understanding trance and to understand what happens with the brain itself when we run into trance work. And I will be talking about that more in my work on the brain patterns and the work of trance work as we move through the different wisdom paths in the apprentice programs. Yeah. So we'll learn quite a bit about what is the neuroscience of shamanism, what is the neuroscience of trance. The other aspect that is so, I think, really important to understand that this is going to take time. We are engaging in many different practices, and these practices suit us and some of them don't suit us. Taking time to practice journey work, taking time to dedicate to ourselves. We have really, really full plates in this world, and the very first thing we often push off our very full plates is time for ourselves. we often push off that spiritual time or that treat yourself good time, but we will always fill it up with duty. We will always fill it up with an addiction of some sort, whether that be television, whether that be whatever that addiction is. That is important. And one of the best lines I heard on a documentary on the radio this week, the best line I heard is, we sabotage the future in order to have presence. So the conversation was about smoking. And so in the moment, the tobacco has all of the effects for the brain to quit anxiety, to not feel depressed. So it does have the chemicals which connect to the neurotransmitters in the brain that are functioning to create depression, anxiety, and so on and so forth. And what the doctor was talking about, well, he says, for what helps you in those 20 seconds, think how horrible it is 20 years later. So we sabotage our future in order to be present.
Right.
And that was profound to me, and I could see that even in our practice of shamanism, how we sabotage our future so we can have the ability to fill our plate with the things that we have duty to. And the thing that we really should have duty to, fundamentally, even if we're only 5 minutes a day, is ourself. Why can we not bring ourself to be important for 5 minutes a day? I think that is a challenge. The other aspect to having successful tips and tricks to journeying is a quiet place and a dedicated space to work for spirit. I know that not everybody has the luxury of dedicating an entire room to spirit. I know that not everybody has the luxury of dedicating a large space to spirit. But there are many ways of engaging a quiet place and recognition. One of the reasons we use altars, some of us use the mesas, so portable altars. I have portable altars that I work with. The reason that I work with portable altars is that it helps me know consciously these are the steps I'm taking to get out of my mundane mind to move into my sacred mind. So if I have objects that I have associated with ritual space, whether it is different colored candles for the 4 directions, whether it is I have black sand for earth, I have ashes from a fire for south, I use water for west, and I have feathers for east. So those are my portable altars. One of them, anyway. So why am I talking about this? Is because not everybody has an entire space that they can dedicate. But I think most of us can have a small gathering of objects that create that quiet place. The addiction to silence that we have in order to be able to do the work is because we have the luxury of having so much space around us. We live in, I live in Canada. We don't have the incredibly crowded conditions that some of the other countries have. So if I was living in a really densely packed area like downtown New York or downtown Saigon, I'm sure it would be very different, the amount of noise that I would be subjected to in my home. The reference that I want to make is, I can't remember if I heard this or if I read this somewhere. However, there was a young male that was writing that had practiced meditation in a large city in China, and there was no silence whatsoever. Even though he was in a temple, the amount of noise that was going on around him, it just forced him to go deeper into that state of meditation, into that state of silence. When I've taken hypnosis, one of the suggestions that a hypnotist will use is to allow any of the sounds that go on around you to just move you into a deeper state of relaxation. So utilize those sounds outside in order to find your presence or your place within yourself. And having a quiet place is more of a mental reality and as well as a physical reality, but how do we quiet our own mind and not become frustrated by the sounds that might jerk us out of a journey trance, a breathing posture, an asana, whatever you are working with. And maybe we need to, or we can, change our perception of what quiet means. These are aspects to deepening our relationship to the spirit world. When we take time to practice our journey work, we find the quiet place and we create a relationship to objects, an altar or mesa, whatever that is, in order to bring us back from one place to the other place. So we are working with learning to use our environment in a way that's going to benefit us instead of not benefit us. And that's one of the joys of practicing any type of spirit work, is the deeper you get involved with your quieting the monkey mind, being able to stay in a place of centeredness, it really deepens the relationship with self. And in deepening the relationship with self, it deepens the relationship with knowing the self. And if we deepen the relationship with knowing ourselves, then we can certainly interpret also on a deeper level what goes on around us. Not necessarily as it just affects us, but truly understand what goes along around us. When we work spiritually, I have always been taught to leave offerings. You're taking something from spirit, it's important to leave something in return. One of the funny, I have witch friends and I've had witch friends for a very long time. One of the poems that somebody said in one of the meetings I was in was, when you have a parking spot, it's the parking fairy. And so when you find that perfect spot, you say, squat, squat, thanks for the spot, and leave some chocolate for the fairy. So, there are ways of leaving offerings that I think are very fun and very fundamental. And if you have nothing to leave for an offering, most of us have hair that we can pull out and that we can leave for spirit. And I think that that's important to recognize. There are different things we can give as offerings. It's also really important in the spirit world to leave offerings. However you find those offerings, if you're going through a gate or a threshold, to leave an offering to the gatekeeper. If you're crossing the river Styx, or if you're crossing a river and you're with a boat keeper, or you give an offering to that boat keeper. You give an offering of thanks to your power animals, to the upper guides. There are lots of different ways of leaving offerings, and bringing offerings from the spirit world into the physical world is another way of building a bridge and building a relationship. So where I talked about using the anchor spot to leave the spirit world behind, you're not leaving the lessons behind. The lessons are still ingrained within you. So the lesson may be that you are going to connect more with trees. In order to connect more with trees in the physical world, we leave an offering of cornmeal. We leave an offering of whatever thing that particular tree has asked of you in your journey. That is the lessons we carry forward. It's building the bridge. We are breaking down the overculture's ideology that we can only exist in one place, in one time, when we all know that we are a multifaceted human being. In shamanism, we journey to engage, embrace, and integrate the multifaceted world we live in. And when we leave offerings, when we have a portable altar, when we quiet our monkey mind, when we journey to the four directions, all these pieces come together to create a wider, more enriched ability to work with the mundane and the sacred world at the same time. I really encourage taking long journeys. Sometimes we need long journeys to get out of our conscious mind and to go into a journey. If I've had a really long day and I need to decompress, the way that I journey at home is I listen to the drumming and the rattle and the last drumming track that we have on the website on Shaman's Way. I listen to the multiple drumming first, and sometimes it takes me that entire journey, and I give myself permission to do my grocery list, to think about my day while my brain is getting entrained within the spirit world using the drums. And I give myself permission to fuck around for half an hour, right? And get in that right frame of brain. And then when the rattles start, that is my cue to let's give her go. And it is a completely different type of journey. The last drumming track is the single drum, and that is when I know I have only half an hour left, so I really need to get my information now. So it is important to make sure that you have the ability to take long journeys. The other thing about long journeys is that it teaches you discipline. It is really easy to get sidetracked. It is really easy to lose ourselves in a journey. One of the more challenging journeys that I was introduced to very early on in the spirit world, or in my training, was a 1 hour long journey. And you would journey 20 minutes out, then you would journey another 20 minutes out, then you would journey the last 20 minutes out. And I've taken my circle through that. And they are some of the deepest, most intense journeys. Giving the brain the opportunity to stay in ceremony or in ritual space for longer than the 15-minute soundbite that we tend to live in encourages a much deeper connection and relationship. And I know that in the future, I've been asked to do a podcast on the use of psychotropics and journeying and the differences between journeying without the use of plant spirit medicines and journeying with the use of plant medicines. And that would be a very good podcast to have guests in to speak about some of their different thoughts or their different ideas. Long journeys are good for enabling us to get to know how we respond to fatigue, because it can be fatiguing to journey for hours at a time. Now, I also have a friend who loves to journey for hours at a time, and it is her spirits who kick her out of the spirit world and tell her, you've had enough, you have to leave now, because she can lose hours in a journey. And those are very, very intense experiences. So the last aspect is that there are many ways to journey, and not everyone journeys in the same way or under the same conditions. I really encourage people, don't give up. And like I said earlier, keep trying. You are worth it. You are worth continuing to try. And feel free to let us know what's going on. There are kinesthetic journeys, not everybody visuals. We are such a visual society. We believe everything is going to be visual. So many people are discouraged if they do their journey work and they don't have visuals. There are many ways to experience the spirit world. There's the kinesthetic journeyers, the people who experience a journey in their body and don't have visual aspects. There are the auditory journeyers, and many of these things can also be combined in one journey. The auditory are the ones who will hear singing as the drum is playing. Many, many times my drum people have talked about hearing angels or trains or different things, and you'll have an entire group having the same auditory experience of that drum. So that is one of the aspects of it. The other aspect of the journeying in that way is that there are also the people who journey and they just know. So their experiences are not the visual, the kinesthetic, but they have that spirit told me this. So they come back with that incredible aspect. More than one way to journey, more than one way to figure this out. I know that the universe bends over backwards to help us, to figure this stuff out, to get this stuff going. We are incredibly blessed to have that as well. And practice wherever you are. Spirit will work with you regardless of your current state of being. Wherever you are, whether you're a beginner or whether you've been at this for, forever, and you're 92 years old and you've been practicing this since before you were born. Spirit goes to you wherever you are. The spirit animals that you work with, the power animals that you work with, many times they come in forms that will get your attention. Power animals can appear like absolutely anything. They're spirit, they're shapeshifters. Just because we see a buffalo for 15 years doesn't mean that that's the only shape that power animal has or that spirit has. It just takes that shape because it has that affinity to you in that shape. We are met by spirit. And patient, be determined. It is an interesting, fascinating path, this path that we have if we've chosen shamanism or not. It is endlessly fascinating. I have yet to be bored, and I've been at this for a very, very long time. No two journeys are ever the same. No deep experiences are ever the same. God shots never stop happening. Those aha moments never stop happening. Nor are the, oh, now I know what that means about myself. Those also don't stop happening. It is a practice that allows you to incorporate lots of other things. Shamanism, as we talked about in the call to shamanism, some people are called to the path of shamanism and some people are called to the path of being a shaman. And so for many people, the path of shamanism is a tool for them in their ongoing toolkit. The ability to journey and then apply it to the crystal grids that they create, or to apply it to their own form of ceremony, their own form of spiritual language, is fascinating to watch. I think it is probably Spirit's play in the beginning to say, well, let us build these very specific traditions and then, let's make it a rainbow color of beans. So those are my main points to tips and tricks for journeying. What do you think, Mr. Doug?
Very, very cool. I know even just resonating with your talk about practice and such, once upon a time I was falling in the habit of even going into a bit of a journey state on the motorcycle, and I'd have to call myself back and make sure it didn't. And after leaving Edmonton for quite a few years, not practicing, not keeping up with it, and then returning to it, now I sometimes even have to work even when I'm laid out and in a very comfortable position, and I struggle. It's almost like I reset many, many years in the practice. So can't stress the practice side enough, for sure. Right?
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. But very cool.
All right. Thank you. Till next time.
All right. As per usual, there was a lot of great content there. Check out our site at shamansway.net /podcast, and in the show notes there will be links to many of the things that Kriket has discussed here, as well as some of the guided meditations around anchor spots, power animals, and 4 directions and such. We will talk to you all next time.